Hey guys, this is Super Mayor Tiffany Henyard, the People's Mayor and People's Supervisor.
Several new developments in South suburban Dalton today. First, the state comptroller has suspended some payments to the village because it has failed to follow the law by providing financial reports.
Imagine a town spiraling into chaos, where the mayor, once heralded as a savior, is now accused of sinking her community into a financial abyss. That's exactly what's happening in Dalton, Illinois, where the drama surrounding Mayor Tiffany Henyard is now the stuff of legend. This tale is filled with more twists and turns than a television series, and it's all unfolding in real time, with Henyard at the center of it all.
Feel the anger tonight at a Board of Trustees meeting in Thornton Township. The board and citizens looking for accountability to their finances while the township...
So what happened to Dalton, a village that seemed to be on a steady path just a few years ago? It's hard to talk about Dalton's decline without pointing fingers at Henyard, the proclaimed super mayor, who, according to reports, has been anything but super for the town's finances. You see, when Henyard took office, Dalton had an extra in its general fund of an impressive $5.6 million. Fast forward to today, and that surplus has turned into a staggering deficit of $3.65 million.
So that's one of the reasons I vote no when we go through our board packets. It's like, some of this stuff, it's like you don't know exactly what it's for, and then when you ask a question, there's no...
It's not like Henyard has been there for decades. She was elected in 2012, and things quickly fell apart. There's a reason former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot was called in to examine Dolan's financial mess. Henyard's spending has raised more than a few questions. We're talking about expensive vacations to Las Vegas, where she reportedly racked up thousands of dollars in taxpayer-funded costs, as well as her famed Amazon shopping sprees. Who spends $33,000 in a single day on Amazon? Most individuals can only dream of going on a shopping spree like that.
It's my heart that you are up here at this special meeting and not downstairs where we have big bingo.
Sometimes we get invoices, but those invoices lead to more questions, and sometimes we don't get answers to those questions. And so it's not about clickbait, it's about just making sure the right...
But before we dive deeper into High's alleged misuse of funds, let's rewind and look at how she even got to this point. It's a story that's as controversial as her actions in office. Henyard didn't just wall into the mayor's office, her rise to power was anything but move. The village of Dalton was left scrambling after the previous mayor passed away, and the Board of Trustees was tasked with finding a replacement with the clock ticking and no consensus in sight. The board, in a last-minute move, appointed Henyard seemingly out of nowhere, according to those who were there. The decision was a shock, even to Henyard herself. But what happened next was even more surprising. From the moment she was sworn in, Henyard seemed determined to make her mark, and not necessarily in a good way. One of her first moves was to start cleaning house long-time employees. Some of whom had been loyal to the previous administration found themselves out the door without so much as an explanation. 2 key officials were fired in what felt like the blink of an eye, leaving many to wonder if Henyard was settling old scores or simply trying to assert her dominance.
Motion to terminate Keith Free.
It was not long before rumors began to circulate regarding the reasons for these firings. Some claimed that she felt threatened by those who were more knowledgeable about the village's operations than she was, while others contended that she was attempting to purge the administration of anyone who might challenge her authority. As Henyard began to consolidate her power, the cracks in her administration began to emerge. Rather than prioritizing the village's needs, it appeared that Henyard was more interested in establishing her own empire. She began to refer to herself as the Super Mayor, a title that was more appropriate for a comic book character than a public official.
Everybody, is it the reason why you guys are not paying whatever that vendor is?
What was it for?
It was for shirts.
The reality was far from heroic, as reports began to emerge about how Henyard was using taxpayer money for personal gain, lavish dinners, expensive trips, and even a private police detail. This was allegedly funded by the people of Dalton. Henyard's penchant for luxury extended to her personal life, as she was reportedly living like royalty with a combined salary of nearly $300,000, which was nearly 3 times the governor of Illinois. This was despite the fact that the average income in Dalton was only $24,000, resulting in a stark disparity that was not going unnoticed by the community.
They were doing, and they thought they can get away.
The residents of Dalton were not idly watching as the stories about Henyard's spending habits began to circulate. Their anger grew, and they began attending village meetings to demand answers. However, Henyard responded by doubling down on her efforts to conceal the truth. She began holding private meetings and even ending public sessions as soon as reporters arrived. In a small town like Dalton, secrets do not remain hidden for long. The tension reached a climax when Lori Lightfoot, who had recently completed her own controversial tenure as Chicago's mayor, was brought in to investigate if there was any hope that Henyard might come clean. Her preliminary findings were damning. In a particularly startling revelation, the village's finances were in a state of disarray, and the expenditure was out of control. Lightfoot disclosed that Henyard had spent more than $43,000 on Amazon in a single day.
Make a one day purchase of over $40,000 to Amazon. And the main thing is,
the primary concern was the nature of the matter, and that was only the beginning. Additionally, there were inquiries regarding police overtime, with some officers reportedly earning more in overtime pay than their actual salaries. It is important to mention that the village was obligated to pay over $1 million for Hen's private police detail.
And for anyone from a township to go to a mayor's conference. A mayor's conference is a mayor's conference for mayor.
The issue of financial mismanagement was not limited to expenditures. It also focused on secrecy. The village clerk, under orders from Henyard's administration, was allegedly instructed not to comply with Freedom of Information Act FOIA requests. This was a clear violation of transparency laws and only served to fuel speculation that Henyard had something to hide. And while all of this was going on, the people of Dalton were left wondering where their mayor had disappeared. Henyard was nowhere to be found, refusing to comment on the accusations against her as if things couldn't get any worse. Henyard's closest allies started facing legal trouble of their own. The former deputy police chief, a staunch supporter of Henyard, was indicted on bankruptcy fraud charges. And yet, despite being placed on administrative leave, Henyard tried to reappoint him to his position. The move was met with outrage from the community and further eroded what little trust remained in her leadership. It was a blatant disregard for the law and a clear indication that Henyard was willing to go to any length to protect her inner circle.
And then, unfortunately, we knew it was going to be a little messy, but it's just something we felt important that had to be done, that should be done. So, but like I said, you have just some kind of...
At this point, the FBI had already taken notice the rumors about Henyard corruption had grown too loud to ignore, and federal investigators started looking into her actions. Subpoenas were issued, and witnesses began coming forward with stories that painted a disturbing picture of Henyard's time. In office, one business owner even claimed that Henyard had shut down his operation because he refused to pay her a $3,500 political contribution. It was a classic case of pay to play, and it was becoming increasingly clear that Henyard administration was more about personal enrichment than public service.
The township residents are paying for her father.
As the investigation deepened, more and more people started to speak out. Residents who had once supported Henyard now saw her for what she really was, a leader more interested in power than in helping her community. Protest broke out. With people calling for her resignation, they labeled her the Dalton dictator, a title that stuck as the scandals continued to pile up. Even those who had initially backed her rise to power were now distancing themselves, realizing that their trust had been misplaced. And let's not forget about the personal scandals that seemed to follow Henyard. Wherever she went, she was accused of retaliating against a former employee who had reported an inappropriate incident during a work trip to Las Vegas. The details were murky, but the accusations were serious, and they only added to the growing list of grievances. Against her, Henyard response was predictably defiant. She denied all wrongdoing, claiming that she was the victim of a smear campaign orchestrated by those who couldn't stand to see a black woman in power. But the evidence against her was mounting, and her cries of victimhood were falling on deaf ears. Meanwhile, Lori Lightfoot's investigation continued uncovering more questionable spending and financial irregularities. The village was drowning in debt, with unpaid bills piling up and services suffering as a result. The public's frustration was palpable, and it wasn't long before the whispers of a federal indictment began circulating. People were speculating whether or not opinion would be charged. But throughout all of this, Henyard remains defiant. She continues to attend village meetings, often speaking into her infamous golden microphone as if she is still in control. But the truth is, her grip.
Debt, and that is the finding of an investigation of village finances and the spending habits of beleaguered Mayor Tiffany.
The drama in Dalton is far from over, though. As the investigation unfolds, new details are emerging almost daily, each one more unexpected than the last. The village that once had so much ashore is now at the mercy of a leader who has seemingly lost her way. And while the people of Dalton wait for justice to be served, they're left for pick up the pieces of a community that is being torn apart by avarice, corruption, and betrayal. In the end, Tiffany Henyard's story is a cautionary tale about the D of unchecked power. It's a reminder that even those who rise to the highest levels of government can fall just as quickly if they forget who they're required to serve. The people of Dalton deserve better, and as the examination continues, they're hoping that a new chapter will soon begin, one where transparency, blame, and true leadership can finally take root. But for now, all eyes are on Henyard as she faces the consequences of her actions, with the fate of Dalton hanging in the balance. So what do you think? Is Tiffany Henyard downfall unavoidably, or is there a chance she might somehow wiggle out of this mess? And with all these allegations swirling, can Dalton ever recover from the damage that's been done? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, continue to remain tuned.